All right, folks, let's kick this off with an image that's hard to shake. A tiny, soaking wet red carpet rolled out for U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio as he arrived in Canada. Now, was this just a weather-induced miscalculation? Or perhaps a masterclass in Canadian subtlety? That's the question we're unraveling today. Social media, as you can imagine, had a field day. I mean, the jokes were flying, calling it the red napkin, or suggesting it might actually be borrowed from a fast food chain's bathroom. Come on, you can't make this stuff up. And then, of course, we've got the resurfacing of Trump's Little Marco nickname from the 2016 Republican primaries. Some people genuinely saw this as a throwback, like Canada was taking the tiniest of metaphorical jabs at Rubio. You know, kind of a, we see you, and here's your little Matt. Play this clip. Now
Ongoing tensions over tariffs and the push for peace between Ukraine and Russia. Brian Yanis is live in Canada for us this morning. Hi, Brian. Good morning.
Dana, good morning. Well, just a couple hours ago, Canada's Foreign Minister Melanie Joly said that she had a long and frank conversation yesterday with Secretary of State Marco Rubio here at the G7 Conference of Foreign Ministers. And in that conversation, she said that she told Rubio that Canada's sovereignty is not up for debate and that Canada will continue to put maximum pressure on the Americans. Now, Joly also said that Canada will be looking for off-ramps to end this trade battle between both countries and that they will work together with the U.S. on things that they agree on. Now, this comes after President Trump made clear yesterday he is not backing down. He will impose reciprocal tariffs on April 2nd, and he thinks Canada should be the 51st state.
We've been ripped off for years, and we're not going to be ripped off anymore. No, I'm not going to bend at all. Aluminum or steel or cars. We're not going to bend. We've been ripped off as a country for many, many years. And to be honest with you, Canada only works as a state. It doesn't. We don't need anything they have. As a state, it would be one of the great states anyway.
Now, it's important to see why a moment like this resonates so much. Think about it. Diplomacy is often seen as this polished series of photo ops, but here, we're reminded it can have its own bite. This isn't just about a soggy piece of carpet. It's landing in the middle of some thick tension between the U.S. and Canada and highlighting a relationship that's gotten, well, let's just say bumpier under President Trump's trade policies. Trump has raised tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum, and Canada, they've pulled no punches. Counter tariffs came swiftly. Then there are Trump's offhand remarks about turning Canada into, yikes, the 51st state. The tiniest red carpet, it feels like Canada's way of saying, here's your welcome, but remember, we're nobody's doormat. Oh, and let's face it, humor seems to have become one of our sharpest tools for political critique. From Twitter to Reddit, Canadians turned petty into an art form. And maybe that's a good reminder that even in these weighty diplomatic moments, there's room for a little levity. And so we have to ask, is this a low-key call-out, as some speculate, or just an accident of logistics? Maybe it's both. Whatever the case, it makes you think about all the little ways power dynamics show up. And with that, the stage is set for an even bigger spotlight on Canada's bold diplomatic resistance. All right, buckle up, because this is where things get real. Canadian Foreign Minister Melanie Joly made it crystal clear at the G7 meeting, Canada's sovereignty is not up for debate, period. 8 words, but man, the weight of them. This wasn't just a policy statement. It was a line drawn deep in the sand, a firm reminder that Canada isn't here to play games when it comes to its autonomy. Now, this isn't happening in isolation. Just look at the trade tensions unraveling between the U.S. and Canada. President Trump's tariffs, let's not mince words. Those were a punch to the gut. Steel, aluminum, and who knows what's next. But Canada swung back swiftly, slapping $20 billion worth of counter tariffs on American goods. Talk about standing your ground. And let's not miss the bigger picture here. Canada is actively working to cut its economic dependence on the U.S., diversifying trade with Europe and Britain. It's a bold strategy, and it clearly underscores just how rattled they are by all this 51st state rhetoric coming from the White House. And about this whole 51st state thing, Trump's comments, whether cavalier or calculated, have poured gasoline on an already fiery diplomatic situation. Think about it. Canadians are proud, deeply so, and the notion of annexation, that's not just offensive. It's frankly incendiary. No wonder Jolie felt compelled to remind everyone that this kind of talk isn't just inappropriate, it's flat out insulting. But don't mistake this for mere bluster. Canada's actions speak louder than words. By uniting provinces, revamping internal trade, and building tighter alliances outside America's sphere, Canada is taking proactive, calculated steps to fortify its independence. A clear rebound from the shockwaves of Trump's trade policies. So while Jolie's declaration might seem like a soundbite on the surface, it channels the mood of a nation standing firm against what they see as existential challenges, not just to their economy, but to their very identity as a sovereign state. Let's dive right into the heart of this G7 summit. When it comes to diplomacy, coordination is key, even in a room full of shared interests and shared tensions. This year's meeting emphasized a collective push for Ukraine's sovereignty, a topic that's united much of the international community. The G7's message was clear. The world won't stand idly by while Russia tramples on the principles of territorial integrity. Strong words, yes, but also strong commitments. Talks of sanctions, rebuilding efforts, and strengthening global security arrangements were all on the table. And here's where things get interesting. Marco Rubio, our Secretary of State, has been walking a fine diplomatic line, calling for continued cooperation with our allies despite the seismic political shifts back home. Think about the complexity here. Balancing strained relationships while trying to project unity. That can't be easy. The shadow of Trump's policies looms large, doesn't it? From tariffs to his, let's say, eyebrow-raising remarks about Canada's potential as the 51st state, the man's presidency has inadvertently added friction to long-standing alliances. It's almost as if relations have required constant damage control, even at this summit. Rubio's reassurances are important, but you can't help but wonder, are our allies buying it? For Canada especially, those relationships have grown wearier. No amount of diplomacy can gloss over the deep economic and geopolitical implications of Trump's moves. Still, you gotta give the G7 some credit. For all the tension, they're working towards a cohesive stance on difficult issues. Personally, this makes me reflect on my own connections to Canada, especially in healthcare. Over the years, I've worked with Canadian colleagues who've shared their own challenges and triumphs. There's always been this sense of collaborative pride, respect for shared innovation, but also a quiet assertion of their independence. And it mirrors what's happening here. Canada's refusal to yield to economic or political pressure reminds me of colleagues who stood their ground despite facing staggering odds. Diplomacy, like healthcare, often requires this mix of resilience and compromise. So, we find ourselves at the intersection of policy and performance. Relations at the G7 aren't just about statements or sanctions. They're about the deeper, subtler fabrics that tie nations together. It's a challenge to reconcile past grievances while laying the groundwork for future cooperation. But as the G7 spotlight fades, one thing is certain. The balance of diplomacy hasn't just been maintained, it's been tested and recalibrated in real time. That wraps up today's episode of The Real 411. I want to personally thank each and every one of you for tuning in and for your continued support. It means more than you know. If you found value in today's discussion, please drop a comment. Follow us on all social media platforms and let us know what topics you'd like to see us cover next. Be sure to sign up for our email newsletter so you never miss an update or exclusive insight. And if you believe in independent media that digs deeper and dares to tell the truth, please consider following The Real 411 on Substack and Fanbase. We offer both free and paid subscriptions, and your support helps us continue producing content that informs, empowers, and sparks real conversation. Thanks again for being part of this journey. Because remember, the story is never just the headline. Until next time, stay informed, stay bold, and stay real.